My journey with Christ began at a very young age. I guess you could say I was born into church. It's not a very exciting story. It's not one of those conversion stories where I was addicted to drugs or pulled off the street or anything like that, but do feel that I was blessed to be born in a family that did take me to church and always loved going. And at the age of 9, I decided to accept Christ and make my faith my own. And my dad baptized me at a little church down in Noonan. I've always loved music too, ever since I was a little kid. I remember I've always loved movie soundtracks as well. And I had one of those little talk boys, like that the Macaulay Culkin had in Home Alone. He made famous in that movie. And I remember one of the movies I particularly loved was the movie Robin Hood, and John Williams did the score for that movie. So I would just take my talk boy and hold it up to the TV so that I could have a copy of that soundtrack. I didn't know you could go to the store and buy that soundtrack, so I would record it and then I would just have it and I could listen to it whenever I wanted to, and I loved to do that. And so I've always really loved music, loved listening to it. And I began to go a little bit deeper into that when I was an early teenager. When I was about 13 years old, I started playing guitar, fooled around with the drums a little bit too, and we were in a band, and don't laugh, our band was called Pop's Apple House. We got the name from a sign of a store called Pop's Apple House on the side of the road, but that was our band name. Played one of our first gigs at the Log Cabin in Fayetteville. I think there were probably like 5 or 6 people there. There was nobody there whatsoever. But really began to develop a love for music and began to become a better musician as a teenager. I started getting opportunities to play at church. I remember the music minister from my church that I grew up in called me one day and said, "Hey Chad, our bass player just quit. Do you think you can come and play bass for us?" And I just remember saying, "Mike, I have no idea how to play bass, but I can play guitar. I guess I could figure it out." So I actually went out and bought a bass from a friend of mine for a couple $100 that same day, and fooled around with the songs until I felt like, okay, I can play these songs. I remember being so nervous that first Sunday. But pretty much from that day on, I was playing some sort of instrument every Sunday. I remember how I got into actually leading worship. There was a particular Sunday where I was playing guitar for the middle school service at our church, which was on Saturday morning. And I was playing guitar and I was kind of leading the band that morning, was just kind of directing the musicians as to what was going on. And I remember specifically after church that day, the senior pastor just came running up to me in the parking lot. I don't think I'd ever seen him run before, and I was certain that he was going to yell at me for speeding in the parking lot or something like that. But he didn't. He just came up to me and he said, "Chad, I think you did a great job leading the band this morning. I want to ask you if you'd just be willing to lead worship next Sunday." And I was just kind of like, "No, Ed, I really appreciate it. That's a really nice offer, but I've never sang in my life before. I don't think that's something I'm really interested in." And he just kind of looked at me and said, "No, you're going to do it." And I really didn't know what to say to that, I guess. So the very next Saturday, I said okay and started leading worship for the middle school students. And I think I've pretty much led worship every Sunday at one church or another since that day. Not long after that, they asked me to start leading for the high school band and leading all the musicians in that band, recruiting new musicians for that band, and helping program the services. So I was doing that as in addition to playing bass on Sunday morning. So at that point, my Sundays consisted of 3 services on Sunday morning playing bass, and then leading 2 services that actually happened at the exact same time in 2 different rooms on Sunday night, one for the high school and one for the middle school. And then play in one and then run out of there and had another guitar in another room and would play for the other service. And it was hectic, but it was so much fun. And I really learned a lot about being a leader, about being a worship pastor. I learned a lot about music and how to work with people, and really began to develop and grow my love for ministry. I had never really planned on going into full-time ministry. I'd actually all through high school planned on going to law school. And when you're in high school, people always ask you, "Oh, what are you going to do when high school's over? Where are you going to go to school? What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would always say, "Oh, I'm going to go to law school. I'd like to be a lawyer." And a few of my friends would say, "No, I think he's going to be a worship pastor." And I always laughed that off, thinking, I don't want to be a worship pastor. But eventually, God just really did a work in me and began to open my heart up to that and really grow my love for ministry. And finally one day, a couple of the pastors at my church came to me and they said, "Chad, we really believe that God may be calling you into ministry. We really think you're gifted and talented in the area of worship, and we are willing to say that if you'll go to college for music and you'll be willing to go into ministry when you're done, that we will pay for you to go to college." And that was just such a huge defining moment for me. I had no idea how I was going to pay for school. But that was one of the things where God was just kind of saying, "You know what, Chad? this is exactly what you need to be doing. This is what I've called you to do. This is what I want you to do, and I'm opening up a door for you to go and do this. After that, I enrolled in Atlanta Christian College and declared my major as music and loved my time at the school there. They did a great job developing me as a musician and developing me as a pastor. They also opened the door for me to have an internship at Mount Perrin Church of God, where I ended up serving for 3 years. I met my wife at Atlanta Christian College. She sat next to me in my Life of Jesus class. I don't think there's a better place that you can meet your spouse. People think I'm joking when I say that to them. And now Lauren and I have been married for almost 6 years. We have 2 kids now. Aria is 2 years old and Collier is 3 months old. She helps me a lot as a pastor, sometimes just mentally and spiritually run through things. She's helped with programming in the past. She's always a great sounding board for me to go home and be like, hey, we have this idea. What do you think about that? And lets me know, at the end of the service, hey, I love this, I love that. She's always been so encouraging. About 6 months ago, Lauren and I were in a place where we saw that God may be calling us to go somewhere else and to do something different. And I think we had kind of gotten in our minds that, this may require us moving out of state, maybe even moving across the country, which was something we really didn't want to do because we had little children. Our family was here. We wanted our kids to really know their family and be close with them, and we wanted the help, honestly, too. We really needed that. Felt like we were in a place that we needed that. And I remember when I first heard about Dogwood, and I talked to Keith, and he said, yeah, we've been praying that God would show us who our worship pastor is going to be. We've been praying for a worship pastor for several years now. And I just thought, how crazy would it be if they've been praying for somebody and Lauren and I have been praying to find a new place, if God saw it fit that I go to Dogwood that literally is 8/10 of a mile from my house. And when we thought we were going to have to move across the country, and sure enough, everything worked out, and I'm here now, and we are so happy to be here. We felt so welcome. We feel so at home, and just been blown away at all the talented people who are already here, who are already serving, and I just honestly cannot wait to see what God is going to do through the worship ministry at Dogwood while we're here. And we plan on being here for many, many years to come. We absolutely love it and are so excited to see what God does in the future.